If you've ever thought of putting a shade sail or sunshade in your yard, on your house, or over your deck like I did here, you're in the right place. My deck was so hot from the summer sun, it was barely usable. So I designed and installed a shade sail for under $30. I'm going to show you the products I used, the materials, and the mistakes I made so that you can avoid them. Now, I'm no handyman, so if I can do it, you can probably do it. And this is going to save you a ton of time and aggravation and maybe give you some good ideas on your project. So let's get into it. Alright, first thing you're going to want to do is select your anchor points for the shade sail. If you have a square or rectangle sail, you'll need 4 points. In my case, I put 2 anchor points on the house and 2 anchor points on 4x4 posts that I attached to my existing deck posts. I did it that way because my deck is elevated about 5 feet, and I would have needed a really long pole or post, probably over 12 feet long by the time I dug a hole and put concrete in it, which is a lot of extra work and a pain in the neck anyway, and it would have still been hard to secure it from swaying with such a tall pole. So if you're installing around a patio at ground level or a close to the ground deck, one advantage for you is you have some flexibility in where you put the posts, and thereby some flexibility on the size and shape of the shade sail that you buy. In my case, I had to decide which posts I wanted to attach my new posts to, and that kind of dictated the size of the shade sail that I would ultimately purchase. And keep in mind, you have to get your shade sail 12 to 24 inches smaller than the location of your anchor points. That gives you some flexibility to get the shade nice and tight, and the shade might also stretch over time, so you don't want to get, you want to make the shade sail a little bit smaller than the space. Now, just as a side note, I've seen some videos where they install their posts into a large bucket and fill it with rocks or sand or something like that, and I cannot imagine that that's going to work. I really don't think it's a good idea. Even for the added benefit of being able to move your shade sail around the yard, I'm pretty sure the wind is going to blow them over, it's going to cause some damage, or worse, cause some injury. And frankly, I think it looks a little cheesy, a little hokey. I hope you didn't already do it that way, but if you did, I'm sure it looks great. But let's talk about how I attached the new post to my existing deck posts, because it was a little bit tricky. Now, if you're not going to do it this way, you can use the chapter headings in the description to skip ahead. You don't have to listen to this part. So I wanted to get 4 8-inch lag bolts into each post to prevent them from swaying. So I had to secure the vinyl sleeve on the posts because the vinyl matches my existing vinyl railing. So to secure that while I was installing it, I put a temporary screw so that it wouldn't move around during installation. So I then took the new post, I clamped it to the existing 4x4 post with 3 big-ass clamps that I bought on Amazon. Again, I put links in the description if you happen to need clamps like that, because it's not really a common thing that you might have. So then, once the post is clamped in place, I drilled a pilot hole for the lag bolts with another big-ass drill bit, but I wanted to make sure I didn't go through to the other side and put a hole in the other side of the vinyl and the wood. So I put a little piece of white tape on the drill bit so I knew exactly how far to go in and where to stop. Just a little trick. Now keep in mind, these 8-inch lag bolts are kind of hard to get in if you have a cheap drill like mine. So I happen to have a heavy-duty ratchet that's like 10 inches long that I used to tighten them up. Alright, let's talk about water runoff, because I made a pretty big mistake here, and I'm pretty sure I can help you avoid it. First thing, you want to measure the rise and the run of where your shade is going to be. That's how high it goes up and how far it comes across. And then you're going to go to this website, calculator.net, and you're going to use their right triangle calculator. I'll put a link in the description to take you right to that website. It's going to help you figure out the angle of your shade, or the pitch of the shade. Now, I've read about 20 degrees is usually good enough for water runoff, and the angle of my shade is right there, right about 20 degrees. But I was still holding water. In fact, some water got onto the shade and it just kind of snowballed, and more water got on the shade and more water. And the problem was that I bought a waterproof shade and all the water was just accumulating during a rainstorm. Now, I thought it was better to get a waterproof shade, and I actually paid more money for the waterproof shade, but it really made the problem worse. You wake up in the morning after a rain and you've got 20, 30 or more gallons of water. The shade sail is stretched to the max. It looks like it's going to burst. I did try poking some weep holes in there. It didn't really work. I put bigger weep holes in there. I thought the thing was going to split and just crash down on my head, but it didn't. But bottom line is, do not buy a waterproof shade. Get the water permeable shade, and frankly, they're less expensive anyway. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, just take the shade sail down when it's going to rain, and that's fine, but it's not that easy. You don't always know it's going to rain. But I do have a really, really good tip that I'm going to give you in a few minutes in the next section, because realistically, it's just not always possible to take the shade sail down, before it rains or before it gets really windy. So either way, you want to get your anchor points as high as possible, even if you do have the water permeable shade, not just for water runoff, but also for headroom and a spacious feeling under the shade. I mean, you don't want to feel like you're in a tent. You're making this shade sail so you can enjoy your space outdoors a little bit more. Now, in my case, I was able to get the anchor points up onto the house about 14 feet high, and after a ton of shopping, I decided the anchor points would be made with what's called a pad eye plate. And I had never heard of a pad eye plate before, but was able to attach them directly over the vinyl siding. And if you're going to use these, you got to make absolutely sure that you get them into a stud behind the siding, because I'm pretty sure they'll just get ripped right out of the wall with a good wind if you don't get them into a stud. But since I'm an amateur with all this stuff, not a real handyman, I had to drill a handful of test holes trying to find the stud. So I made a bunch of holes in my siding. So I just made sure I put some silicone caulk over the holes to stop any water intrusion down the road. And thankfully you can't really see them from the ground anyway. Now, Home Depot had some other options. They did not have any pad eye plates at all, so I ended up ordering them from Amazon. But I didn't like the other options that Home Depot had, so I ended up buying almost everything from Amazon. And honestly, the prices were a lot better. Like, everything was at least half the price that they had at Home Depot. In fact, some of them was, Home Depot was like 3 times the price on some items. So just take that for what it's worth. And my other anchor point were the eye rings, and they were pretty straightforward to install. You just pre-drill a hole and then screw them in by hand wherever you'd like to put them on the 4x4 post. So next we need to talk about how to connect the shade to the anchor points that you just got set up. If you do decide to use rope because it's quick and simple and it comes with the shade, you'll need to make what's called a taunt line knot. And I'll put another link in the description to a video explaining how to make this kind of knot. And I did confirm with an Eagle Scout friend of mine that this is the best kind of knot for this application. But in order to get a lot of tension on the rope while you're making the knot, I used ratchet straps to pull the shade tight while I made the knot standing up on top of the ladder. Then I slowly released the ratchet strap and removed them. And this system worked great, except over the course of a few months in the summer, if I needed to get up on the ladder to adjust the tension on the ropes, maybe the shade got a little loose, then I had to get back up on the ladder, get the ratchet straps, and it was a little bit of a pain in the neck. So going forward, I'm going to change out the ropes at the house anchor points for a chain or maybe for a turnbuckle that won't need to be adjusted at all during the season. So once I get it set up, any adjustments that I make will be made on the lower side at the 4x4 posts. So if you're still listening, This coming tip is probably the best and most time-saving tip of all. I'm going to change out the carabiners on the 4x4 posts for what's called a rope cleat or a cam cleat. And again, I had never heard of this before, but apparently they're used quite a bit in boating and sailing to secure and tie off a rope. So my plan is to run the rope from the shade through the eye loop at the top of my 4x4 post, run it down the post midway where I'll install this rope cleat. And you're basically going to tie it off as if you're tying off a boat. And you should be able to get it nice and tight without hand tools, without getting up on a ladder, and it should be nice and secure. And it should be much, much easier to take the shade down quickly and then to put it back up and get it nice and tight without tools and whatnot. So the carabiners did work okay, and if you like them, that's fine. But just so you know, it is hard to pull the carabiners off by hand because of the tension on the shade sail, and especially if you're standing on a ladder and it's windy, like it's just about to storm. So and it's equally hard to reinstall the shade after the storm with the same amount of tension that you had before, again without using tools and whatnot. So I hope this solution will be much, much easier, but please keep in mind I haven't actually done this yet and tested it yet. Make sure to secure the carabiners so they don't fly around, because I'm sure they could do some damage, like break a window or bust you in the face or something worse. Alright, so now for the fun part. You've got your anchor points all figured out and how you're going to attach your shade. Now you can go onto Amazon and pick the size, the shape, and the color of your shade sail. Now keep in mind that standard sizes are going to be cheaper than custom sizes, and make sure that your shade is smaller than the distance between your anchor points. And of course, make sure that it's not waterproof. Now I paid between $20 and $80 for my shades, but don't forget to check the open box items on Amazon. They are at the bottom right corner on the product page, and I've saved 20%, as much as 50% on things using this strategy. So make sure you shop around. There are probably a small handful of Amazon sellers that sell these sail shades, so I would check each one of them for open box items, and you get a nice discount. I'll put links in the description that take you directly to the products on Amazon, and you should bookmark them so they're easy to find later if you want to shop. Also, I did get some of these solar powered twinkle lights. They were like $10 each. Really made a nice difference in the evening for the ambiance under the shade sail, and they go on and off automatically, and they're solar, which is kind of nice. Here's a quick recap of the money. The sail shade cost me about $73, but don't forget that was a waterproof one, which was a little bit more money. And I did buy some ratchet straps and tools that weren't really part of the project, but I had to get them anyway to do the job. And I did spend $30 a piece on those vinyl sleeves for the 4x4, so if you have a wood deck you wouldn't need those. So hardware, sail shades, and everything included is about $350. I'm curious if you completed your sail shade project. Did you spend more? Did you spend less? Leave a comment in the comment section. And of course, if you have some questions about what I spent or the materials I used, feel free to ask that as well. Alright, so now that the shade sail is taken down, it does look kind of funny with just two poles behind me. So what we're probably going to do for the winter is put some string lights up to give us a nice ambiance in the evenings out here. We'll probably also take the triangle down for the winter. The sun's not as bad as it is in the summer. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, saved you some time, some money, and until next time, thanks for watching. Have a great day.